Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me today for our presentation on how to get a good night's sleep, something that I'm sure every student wants to know a little bit more about. And let's not lie, probably all of our faculty and staff as well. My name is Stephanie Will. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor and I am the Mental Health Services Program Manager here at Montgomery College. I work with our Student Health and Wellness Center for Success, or SHAW Center. We do a number of different things at the Shaw Center. We have our Fuel for Success program that brings you programs like the mobile markets, lunch on the go, snack bags. In the mental health program, I do things along the lines of mental health first aid certification training, as well as a lot of these different presentations and things like Mindful Mondays. We also have a health safety education program that brings things like bringing in the bystander training, sexual assault prevention and awareness. And then finally, our physical health wellness piece that brings classes like Zumba and belly dancing, yoga, and our flu clinics to the college. So we do a number of different things at the Shaw Center. If you're not familiar with us, I encourage you to check out our website on the Montgomery College website um, and learn some more about the things that we are offering this and every semester. So today, though, we are going to be talking about how to get a good night's sleep. Like I said, something that we probably all strive for and is really challenging, not just as a student, but even as a person in the workforce. Getting a good night's sleep can be really challenging. So hopefully we'll all learn a little bit of something today about ourselves and some of the changes that we can make that may help us moving forward to get that good night's sleep. So I just like to start off with this book. It's Go the F to Sleep. It's actually narrated in the audiobook by Samuel L. Jackson. So if you could just manage to imagine his lovely, deep voice narrating this particular book. And it's something that I'm sure we may have even said to ourselves at some point in time when we're laying in bed and just can't seem to fall asleep. So let's start with what is enough sleep? What is good sleep? When we talk about how to get a good night's sleep, what does that actually entail? So, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine actually recommends about 7 to 8 hours a night of sleep for adults. Now, that's going to look different for teenagers, that's going to look different for young children. We are all generally in the adult category, so that's what we're looking at here. We get two different types of sleep in a given night. We have REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement, and non-REM sleep. And we generally cycle through these REM and non-REM sleep about 3 to 5 times within a given night. So we want to make sure that we're getting enough of these cycles as we're going through. There is something also called circadian rhythms. And this is just one of those natural things that all people, all animals have. And it's what helps us to sleep and what helps us to stay awake. And it's based on the sun, it's based on our activity, our movement throughout the course of the day. And basically, it releases certain hormones, certain chemicals into our body at certain points of the day that tell us to either go to sleep or tells us to wake up. So this is a really important system that we all have to get that melatonin to help us sleep and to get that cortisol in us to help us be awake and be present for whatever is going on during the day. And it's really based on that light dark cycle, which is why sometimes we get a little messed up around daylight savings because we get thrown the time and our dark light cycle get a little bit messed up during that point. So sleep is obviously important. We know that this is something you wouldn't be here today if you didn't think that sleep was important. But there's a number of different things that it really can help contribute to. One is improving our immune function. Our immune system is what fights off infections and colds, COVID, flu, all those different types of things. And if we are getting run down, then our immune system stops functioning the way that it's supposed to, leaving us more susceptible to getting sick. I don't know if anybody has ever been like me, and at the end of a semester, once you get through finals, you're just so exhausted that you end up getting sick almost immediately after you finish with your exams. Because again, that immune system's really been broken down over time, and it's leaving you weakened, and more likely to get sick. Sleep is also important because it allows the brain's waste removal system to do its job. During the course of our lives, there's different kind of gunk, plaques, and things like that that build up in different areas of our brain. And these are the things that can cause dementia, Alzheimer's. And when we sleep, our brain is actually going into these different areas and cleaning out that gunk that is building up, those plaques that are building up. And if we're not getting enough sleep, we're not giving our brain enough time to do that. So those things are going to build up more quickly and are going to leave us more vulnerable to things like dementia. And just generally, if you've not slept well for a number of days in a row, you know that your brain and your body are just not working as effectively as they could. Our short term memory becomes impacted. So we don't remember the things that we've done or the conversations that we've had, especially not, with good clarity. Maybe we feel a little wobbly if we're very, very tired. It really impacts our balance and coordination as well. So sleep is important not just for our mental acuity, but also our physical ability to keep moving and keep going throughout the course of our day. So, what are some of the things that can keep us from having a good night's sleep? First is just not getting enough hours of sleep, right? Being a student, especially if you are working on top of that, if you have a family, if you're a caregiver, you work long hours. Sometimes we don't have 8 hours to sleep all the time. In a previous job that I had, so many people ended up working double shifts that by the time you get home, it's maybe only 6 hours until you actually have to report to work the next day. So there's not even that time to get 8 hours of sleep in. When we're shift workers, when we're working overnights or things along those lines, that when our body tries to sleep at the wrong time of day, those circadian rhythms get interfered with. So normally when it gets dark and our body is releasing that melatonin to help us sleep, we need to be up and we need to be awake. So we're using other things like caffeine or maybe taking a jog or whatever the case may be, to try to keep ourselves awake, try to keep those cortisol levels up, when our body really wants to be asleep. And then when the light comes, and it's morning and we say, okay, it's time to go to bed, our body is used to releasing that cortisol to keep us awake. So that can make it really challenging when people are working on those evening type shifts or overnight shifts, to really get a good night's sleep. Sometimes we don't get all the different types of sleep that our body needs. Again, I mentioned the REM sleep and the non-REM sleep. We need both of those. There's no shortcut to just, only REM sleep is going to be what's restful or helpful. Um, we need both. So if we tend to wake up a lot during the middle of the night, that's interfering with those cycles. If we take naps, especially if we take long naps, that interferes with those cycles as well. Um, I'm not going to say naps on the whole are a bad thing. We all love a little nap every now and then, but if we do so, we should keep it short so we're not getting deep into one of those cycles and we're not interrupting ourselves in the middle of maybe some REM sleep and making ourselves feel more tired at that point. And then some people also just have a sleep disorder. There are many out there, and it can really prevent us from getting enough sleep or causes poor quality sleep. Sleep apnea is probably the one that most people are familiar with. Basically, your body stops breathing in the middle of the night, and then a person might snore or sputter and wake themselves up so they begin breathing again. You'll see sometimes people have those CPAP machines that helps keep that flow of oxygen So that's not happening. But even when we're dealing with a lot of stress or anxiety, um, if we are using substances to try to help us sleep, if we have other types of medical conditions that can actually impair our ability to fall asleep and stay asleep for the whole night and really impact that ability to get some good sleep. And of course, over the last 15, 16 months with COVID and everything, there have been a lot of additional complications leading to disruption in everyone's sleep. We are at this point kind of coming out, hopefully, of COVID. So you might be like, well, why are you still talking about this? Why would this still be impacting us? But the truth is, we don't know what the long term impacts of COVID are going to be. We don't know how the stress and the trauma of this past 15, 16 months is going to impact us long term. So we might continue to see things like very vivid dreams, like a lot of people were experiencing in the very beginning of COVID. The increased anxieties, while more people are being vaccinated, and that's wonderful and that's great, things like the Delta variant are on a lot of people's minds. And after being told to stay home and not interact with anybody, uh, going back out into the world can be anxiety provoking in and of itself. So that can be really challenging for some people. Obviously, we still have a lot of health concerns, financial concerns. Am I going to be able to get my job back, or will my landlord be um, understanding if it takes me a little bit of time to pay back some of the rent that I may owe? Obviously, academics, when we add that on top of things that, that's always a stressor. And, as is family, we love our families, hopefully. Maybe we don't always, but they can cause us a lot of stress, either unintended or sometimes we're a caregiver for members of our family. So they can cause additional stress in that way. And there's also less division between the different parts of our life since COVID. Many people were working from home. Depending on what type of space you live in, where you sleep in your bed might be where you do your homework or where you take your exams or where you're in class. Some people are lucky enough to maybe have a different room that they're able to do that in. But if we live with a number of people, we might not be able to get the privacy that we need out in a public space like the kitchen or the dining room. And we might have to be in our rooms. And when we have less division, our body is no longer able to associate, our bed and our bedroom with sleep and relaxation. All of a sudden, it becomes a place where, I experience stress in this place because I'm doing class or I'm doing homework in this space as well. So, what happens when you don't get enough sleep? I alluded to some of this earlier, but safety is a really big thing that, we often don't talk about. We talk about drunk driving, impaired driving from other substances, but really, drowsy driving causes a lot of fatal car accidents, about 6,000 fatal car accidents um, about a year occur because of drowsy driving. Um, about 1 in 5 adults have fallen asleep at the wheel in the last month. So sometimes when we get in the car and maybe it's late or maybe it's early and we're just feeling really tired and we think, well, I'm just tired, it's fine. But our reaction time is slowing down. Again, I mentioned that impaired memory, the ability to focus is decreased. So if there's an obstacle in your way, if you need to swerve around something, a pedestrian walks out in front of your car, we're going to be less able to react to that appropriately if we're overly tired while we're driving. I'll say not getting enough sleep also impairs our health. Aside from our immune system, it could also increase our risk of high blood pressure, colorectal cancer, heart disease. I mentioned dementia earlier, type 2 diabetes, and again, just 3 times higher risk for catching a cold if we aren't getting enough sleep. So, that really shows just how much we're putting our body at a disadvantage if we're not trying to get some of that additional sleep. So what are the different things that alert us to the fact that, okay, maybe I need some help. Maybe I need to be doing something different to get some better sleep. One of the things is, again, if we're nodding off or we're daydreaming while we're driving and we get somewhere and we think we're not quite sure how we got there. Our body was kind of on autopilot in a way. Um, if we are watching a movie, TV show, um, if we're in a theater and we fall asleep in the middle of a theater, or we're falling asleep in inappropriate places in general when we should be paying attention, that can be an indicator. Irritability is a really big one if we're not sleeping enough. I know for me personally, irritability is definitely one of the things that I begin to express when I'm feeling really overly tired. Mentioned the slowness of the reaction time, difficulty doing basic math. If you're out to dinner and you're at a restaurant and you're really struggling to figure out what the tip is, and that's normally some math that comes pretty easily to you. If we're laying in bed for a long time and we're not falling asleep, um, forgetting names, having trouble keeping track of familiar tasks, like you're losing your keys frequently. And it's not that, your roommate is playing a joke on you and just moving your keys, but you legitimately can't remember where you put them. Again, I mentioned sleep apnea. If people are having these loud snoring, gasping, or choking sounds during sleep, that could be an indicator of that. And even if it's not an indicator of sleep apnea, that's going to be really disruptive to your ability to sleep because you might snore yourself awake at some point in time. And even if you do sleep 7 or 8 hours, if we're still feeling tired during the day, that's an indicator that maybe we're not getting the quality of sleep that we need. And for students, just being in class and really struggling to pay attention, for professionals, being in a work meeting and you really want to pay attention, but your mind is just wandering, you're feeling very heavy, and feeling like maybe you're about to fall asleep, and then forgetting what it was that was discussed in the meeting or in the class. So if you're experiencing, maybe two of these, three of these, hopefully you can take some notes throughout the course of this presentation and really put some of these behavioral practices into play. So if anybody knows, I'm a big Grey's Anatomy fan. Dr. Christina Yang is one of my favorites. And this is one of the great quotes I love, where she's on her rotation. She says, should I sleep or should I shower? I could sleep in the shower, but I'm also starving. So it's a really great example of, maybe not taking the best care of ourselves because we're so focused on the other things that we have to get done. So one of the things that I wanted to do in this presentation today is do a little sleep quality questionnaire, give everyone an opportunity to really think about what is the quality of sleep that I am getting. So if you want to pause this, go grab a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, and then we're going to go through this questionnaire question by question and give you the opportunity to add up your score at the end and really take a look at where your sleep kind of falls. This is not a diagnostic tool. This is not going to tell you you have a sleep disorder or anything. This is just an informational type of tool that you can either bring to your doctor, bring to your therapist, and use it as a beginning point for a discussion about sleep and how to get some better sleep. So the first question is, how long does it take you to fall asleep? If you fall asleep generally between 0 to 15 minutes, give yourself 4 points. If it takes you between 16 and 30 minutes, give yourself 3 points. If it takes you between 30 and 45 minutes, give yourself 2 points. If it takes you between 46 and 60 minutes, give yourself 1 point. And if it takes you more than an hour to fall asleep, give yourself 0 points. And we're generally thinking about the last month. We're not necessarily thinking about the entirety of our life, but in the last month, about how long does it take you to fall asleep? Next question, if you wake up one or more times during the night, how long are you awake total? So add up all the time that you're awake. Maybe you only wake up once, but you're awake for an hour, or maybe you wake up 6 or 7 times and you're only awake for 2 or 3 minutes. So we're going to add however much time it is that you're awake for the course of the night. So if you are awake for only about 0 to 15 minutes, give yourself 4 points. 16 to 30 minutes, give yourself 3 points. 30 to 45 minutes, give yourself 2 points. 46 to 60 minutes, give yourself 1 point. And if you are awake for more than 60 minutes, give yourself 0 points. So again, in the last month, if your wake up time is earlier than you intended to wake up, so maybe you have an alarm set, and you wake up before your alarm goes off, how much earlier are you waking up? So if you're waking up maybe 0 to 15 minutes before your alarm, give yourself 4 points. If you're waking up 16 to 30 minutes before your alarm, give yourself 3 points. 30 to 45 minutes, give yourself 2 points. 46 to 60 minutes, give yourself 1 point. And more than 60 minutes, give yourself 0 points. And again, in the last month, about how many nights a week do you have a problem with your sleep? So if it's no nights or 1 night, give yourself 4 points. If it's 2 nights a week, give yourself 3 points. 3 nights a week, give yourself 2 points. 4 nights a week, give yourself 1 point. And if it's 5 to 7 nights, give yourself 0 points. And how would you rate your overall sleep quality? So how well do you think you are sleeping? If you think your sleep quality is very good, give yourself 4 points. If you think it's good, give yourself 3 points. If you think it's average, give yourself 2 points. If you think it's poor, give yourself 1 point. And if you think it's very poor, give yourself 0 points. So, okay, we're moving on to a different type of question. So again, we're still thinking about the last month, but to what extent has poor sleep affected your mood, energy, or relationships? So if you've gotten poor night's sleep, has it impacted your mood, how energetic you feel, or your relationships with other people? If you feel like it hasn't impacted those things at all, give yourself 4 points. If you think it's impacted a little, give yourself 3 points. If you think it's impacted you somewhat, give yourself 2 points. If you think it's impacted you much, give yourself 1 point. And if you think it's impacted you very much, give yourself 0 points. So again, in the last month, to what extent has poor sleep affected your concentration, your productivity, or your ability to stay awake? So if you don't think it's impacted it at all, give yourself 4 points. If you think it's impacted it a little, give yourself 3 points. If you think it's impacted your concentration, productivity, or ability to stay awake somewhat, give yourself 2 points. If you think it's impacted you much, give yourself 1 point. And if you think it's impacted you very much, give yourself 0 points. So again, in the last month, to what extent has your poor sleep troubled you in general? So again, how much are you thinking about it? Are you concerned about it? Are you worried about your poor sleep? So if you've not been troubled at all, give yourself 4 points. If you've been troubled a little, give yourself 3 points. If you've been troubled somewhat, give yourself 2 points. If you've been troubled much, give yourself 1 point. And if you've been troubled very much, give yourself 0 points. All right, again, another type of question here. So how long have you had a problem with your sleep? So again, we're thinking beyond kind of to our whole lives now a little bit. So if you don't feel like you have a problem with your sleep or it's been going on for less than a month, give yourself 4 points. If you've been having a problem for about 1 to 2 months, give yourself 3 points. If you've been having a problem for 3 to 6 months, give yourself 2 points. If it's been 7 to 12 months, give yourself 1 point. And if it's been greater than a year, give yourself 0 points. So now what I want you to do is total up all of your points that you've gotten so far. So take a minute and go ahead and do that. And once you have your total points, if you have somewhere between 0 and 9 points, you seem to have more severe sleep problems, and you should definitely be consulting with a doctor, therapist, somebody, some professional to talk about the difficulties you're having with sleep and how to help impact positively. If you've got between 10 and 18 points, it sounds like you have some sleep problems, and it's important to examine your sleep habits and see how you can make changes. If you have 19 to 27 points, your sleep is in good shape, but there are still many steps that you can take to make it better. And if you got between 28 to 36 points, your sleep is in good shape. Keep doing what you're doing and spread the word. Again, this is not a diagnostic tool. This is simply to help get a little bit of information. So that way, when we do talk to a professional, we can say, hey, I took this questionnaire. It said that there is some concern based on my answers. Can we talk further? So we have to be careful that we're not giving things like questionnaires too much power, that we're also consulting with professionals in the process as well. So, okay, so now we're at what everybody actually came for. How do I actually get a better night's sleep? One thing to remember is that occasional sleeplessness is totally normal. It's something that's very typical, and we are all going to get poor night's sleep every now and then. That's just life, right? If we have a big presentation coming up, for me, it's when I travel. I get very anxious if I have to get on a plane. I'm very anxious about missing my flight, so I never sleep well before a flight. So these are totally things that we would expect anybody to struggle with. Another thing that people don't tend to know or understand is that there's no such thing as catching up on sleep. It tends to be during the week, maybe we're staying up too late and we're getting up early to go to work or class. And then we say, well, on the weekend, I'll just sleep extra and I'll catch up. But that's actually making the problem worse sometimes. There's also no way to streamline our sleep cycle so that we can sleep less. Again, I mentioned we need REM sleep, we need non-REM sleep. There's no shortcut through it. A lot of medications do exist for sleep out there. Some prescriptions, some over the counter, and some of them can be very helpful in the short term. But with certain types of sleep medications, that it's easy to develop a dependence on them. So it's something we want to be careful about using for long term. Sometimes people will use alcohol to help them fall asleep faster. The tradition of like the nightcap right before bed. But what alcohol does is it makes you pass out. So, but you're actually not getting good quality sleep. So even if you're able to fall asleep faster than maybe you do on your own, your sleep is going to be interrupted. And just generally the quality of sleep is not good because you're not really sleeping, you're passing out. Really, what impacts most people's sleep problems, again, there are some, like I said, that are tied to certain, whether it's behavioral health or physical health disorders or things like sleep apnea. But for most of the problems that people have with sleep, behavioral changes are going to be a lot more effective long term in helping us get better sleep. And those behavioral changes are hard. I'm not going to lie. We all have our routines. We have things that we need to do, over the course of the day. But those are some of the things that are going to really impact us positively. And sometimes there isn't a shortcut around that. So we'll talk about some of those behavioral changes and see, which ones we feel like we can put into play in our lives. So there are a couple of different behavioral modifications that we can do that are impacting our environment that help us sleep better. So keeping our bedrooms dark, quiet, and cool. If you've ever noticed, if you're hot in the middle of the night, you're probably waking up more often. So the cooler it is, the better that you're going to sleep. Keeping things dark and quiet, and I'm guilty of this. I sleep with the television on. I try to turn the volume down really low, but if there's lights going on, even if we are not consciously awake and looking at the television, just having those lights, can activate our brain in a way that we don't necessarily want them to when we're sleeping. Using a nightlight or flashlight if you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I think we all know that harsh moment of having to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go to the bathroom and you turn on the light and you're squinting and it's like, oh my goodness, it's too bright. And then by the time that you're done, you're kind of awake at that point, right? So if we're able to use a flashlight or a nightlight, not having as much light is not going to make us as awake as turning on overhead lights or lamps might be. Keeping our phone face down on the nightstand and putting on do not disturb mode. This is probably one of the hardest things is to, put our phones down in the bedroom. But again, if your phone is face up and it's, flashing every time a text comes in or an alert comes in, even overnight, that's going to be disruptive and it's going to kind of alert our brain that something is going on. And this one is the hardest for me, but no pets on the bed. I have 2 cats and they love to snuggle in bed with me, but I will admit they are very disruptive to my sleep. When they decide they want to move, I end up getting kicked in the face or walked all over or whatever the case may be. So, keeping your pets off your bed eliminates something that might move, shift, or otherwise make noise that might wake you up in the middle of the night. I mentioned very briefly earlier that your body and your brain make associations. So when we're doing homework in bed, our brain starts to associate that space with being awake and needing to be aware. So if we then try to go to sleep in bed, our brain is like, okay, we're in bed, it's homework time, right? Because that's where we do our homework. But we're trying to tell our brain, no, it's bed is for bedtime, but it gets a little confused. It's the same thing where with pajamas and versus gym clothes. If we wear certain clothes to go to work, our brain starts getting into work mode. If we wear certain clothes to go to the gym, our brain starts getting into gym mode. So if we're wearing the same clothes we wear to the gym to bed, again, our brain is like, okay, it's time to get up. It's time to pump some of that cortisol and, get moving because we're going to the gym. But we're like, no, I'm actually going to bed. So having like a separate set of actual pajamas is much more effective at getting our brain to kind of go into sleep mode. So, as much as we possibly can, using our bed only for sleep or sex. Again, not having special pajamas that are bed only. So that way, when we put on our pajamas, when we get into bed, our brain is in sleep mode. That's what it's thinking is going to happen. And it's shifting all of the chemicals in our body to facilitate better sleep rather than facilitating getting up, going to the gym, or needing to concentrate or pay attention to things. There's also a lot of routines that we can put into play that are going to help with our sleep. One of them is no electronic devices at least 30 minutes before bed. Again, I know this one is really challenging. It's hard to put the phone down. It's hard not to watch TV for 30 minutes before bed. I even struggle. I have a Kindle and I'm like, I can't even read my Kindle 30 minutes before bed. But this is some time that you can take maybe to catch up with people in your households, read an actual hardback book, do some homework, things along those lines that don't require looking at those blue screens that we get from computers, phones, televisions. no caffeine after 2 p.m. Now, the young people listening to this, maybe you don't have a problem with having caffeine after 2 p.m., but I know once I hit, I think about 30, if I have caffeine anytime after 2, I will never fall asleep at night. So, it's something that really does impact even if we don't feel more awake when we immediately drink the caffeine, but then when we're laying in bed and it's hard for our brain to kind of calm down, it's hard for our body to kind of calm down, and we're laying there for an extended period of time. It's actually very impactful in the long term. Having a consistent bedtime, even on the weekends. Again, this one's tough. We think about, oh, it's Friday night, Saturday night. I don't have to, be anywhere in the morning, maybe. Or if I do, maybe it's a little bit later than I have to be on the weekends. So I can sleep later. I can go to bed later. I'm a night owl, so this is very challenging for me as well. But the more consistent we go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, again, our body gets into that routine, it gets into that habit. So we're those circadian rhythms, um, that release of chemicals to keep us awake and to keep us asleep really gets settled if we're not constantly shifting. So one of the things that we can do to help is to do some stretching, deep breathing, or meditation to help us transition to bedtime, especially if maybe we were doing something strenuous before bed. So maybe you're a person who likes to work out at night. So you get back from the gym, maybe you take a shower, but you're still a little bit amped up. So, maybe doing some of that deep breathing or meditation can be good to kind of shift your body into a more low key mode to get ready for bed. Writing a gratitude list for bed. Because sometimes if we're feeling really anxious or we feel like we've not had a good day, putting something positive in our mind can be really effective for putting us in a better place emotionally for sleep. And making our bed every morning, just having a clean, neat space, believe it or not, really does help our mental health and really does help our sleep in that way, rather than seeing, walking into our room and seeing just kind of a mess of sheets and pillows and, whatever else. Um, and again, if you're putting these routines into practice, you're changing your environment in your bedroom and you're still having problems, see a doctor. Again, maybe it's your primary care physician, if you have a therapist. Um, Again, behavioral changes really do make a big difference. But if they're not making a difference for you and you're not just trying it one night or 2 nights, but you're really putting in a concerted effort to do many of these things over a period of weeks, and you're being consistent with it, but you're not noticing any changes, that might be time to see, okay, maybe there is some sort of, medical or other mental health condition that's going on that's impacting my sleep. So now I'm going to show a short video of a TED Talk on how do I sleep better by Dr. Viga Kaufman. I really love this video and I love her. She's wonderful. Um, so she talks a little more scientifically at times, and she'll reiterate some of the points that I made. But I think this is a really wonderful and worthwhile video. So I hope you all enjoy it. Okay, so I hope you all enjoyed that video. I really, like I said, I love her. She's wonderful. And I think bringing awareness to things like CBTI are really important, and understanding that insomnia is not something that we have to deal with. It's something that has treatment, and it's something that can get better, and we don't have to just suffer through being exhausted all the time. So, after everything I've talked about, after everything Dr. Kaufman talked about, what's the bottom line, especially for our students? Sleep deprivation and deficiency impairs memory and concentration. Memory and concentration are two of the most important things we need for academic success, right? We need to be able to pay attention in class, and we need to remember what we learned so we can do well on our tests and, write wonderful papers, right? So sometimes staying up that extra 2 hours, 3 hours, because we have to study, is actually putting us at a disadvantage. I know that sounds really counterintuitive, but cramming that information in your brain, but then having a lack of sleep so that we can't remember it, it doesn't help in that way. So if you do nothing else, put the books away and get some rest, please. So these are some of the resources that we use to create this presentation today. So feel free to, John Hopkins Medicine is actually a really wonderful resource on sleep. They talk a little bit about all the different types of strategies I talked about today. And again, like I said, if you're putting some of these strategies into play and you're not noticing any sort of difference, talking to a primary care physician, talking to a therapist can be very helpful. And hopefully you can get yourself some good sleep very soon. Thank you all so much for being here. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.